Hey, welcome back. It's Nolan Mathias from Mortgage 360, and today we're discussing the absolute assault that New Zealand made on their real estate investment community. And we're going to talk about the implications for not only New Zealanders, but also for Canadians if the Canadian government followed suit and implemented similar policies. And then we're going to talk about policies that they may implement in order to cool down the real estate market. But before we get into it, do me that favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and please hit that like button so more people like you can see this video. And don't forget about our race to 10,000 subscribers, where one lucky subscriber is going to win their rent or mortgage payment for a month just for subscribing to this channel. We have now made it through 5,000 subscribers. I very much appreciate the 2,000 subscribers that have joined in the last 28 days. And for you to enter, if you haven't already subscribed, all you have to do is click that subscribe button. It's free, it's easy, and it's definitely worth it. The definitive guide on how to manage your credit: product, penalty, price, in that order. It's never been more important to get your mortgage right. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's discuss this attack on real estate investors in New Zealand, because that's what it is. And this isn't an attack on speculators. This is an attack on real estate investors, and it ultimately has some major implications for the rental market in New Zealand. It basically kicks the can down the road. It allows people potentially to purchase properties at a lower price, but what it is going to do is it's going to kick the average real estate investor out of the market, and it is essentially going to create a scenario where rents are probably going to increase, and as a result of rents increasing, people who need affordable housing are going to be adversely impacted. So this is one of those scenarios in economics where, I'm not on the ground in New Zealand, I don't know what's happening, but I can see from afar that the action that they are taking is not going to have the intended consequences that they are looking for. And so here's what they did. And they basically said, from here on out, going forward, real estate investors are not going to be able to write off the interest that they pay on the mortgages that they get in order to purchase the properties. So think about this. This is counter to the principle in business that you should be able to write off your expenses and not have to pay taxes on the full revenue without first deducting your costs. So an absolutely ludicrous idea from the perspective of investing and running any sort of business whatsoever. But the problem with it is this, is it quite frankly is going to kick the average real estate investor like you and me, the people who aren't buying big properties, but who are buying one property at a time to, have a property that essentially produces an income and provides a nice place for somebody to live. It's going to kick us out of the market because we're going to have higher levels of taxes, and it just isn't going to make purchasing a property make sense anymore. Or if it does make it make sense, what it's going to do is it's going to pass on those added costs. So the reduction in profit is going to be passed on to the renters, and therefore rents are going to go up. And it's just a crappy scenario across the board. And the reason why I want to talk about this today is not because I necessarily have any desire to talk about what's going on in New Zealand or other countries, but the reason why I want to talk about it is because of the implications it would have if Canada followed suit. Because one of the other things that the government in New Zealand did recently is they increased the income allowed on their government incentive program for first-time homebuyers for their down payment incentive program. So think about that. Does that sound familiar? First-time homebuyer incentive program in Canada. I don't know if Canada modeled ours after New Zealand or New Zealand modeled theirs after ours, but the numbers are pretty similar and the programs are pretty similar. So my fear here is that the Canadian government sees what's going on in New Zealand and says, hey, that's a good idea as well. Because what they didn't do is they didn't affect the speculators, the people who are buying a property, doing minor renovations, and selling it 3 to 6 months down the road, because guess what? The interest cost for those people is negligible. They don't even care. If you don't want to charge me, if you don't want to allow me to deduct $3,000 worth of interest on a property that I'm going to flip in a 6-month period and basically make $40,000 or $50,000 on, that's fine. I don't care. Not a big deal for speculators, the people who are running up the prices and basically overbidding on properties with the expectation that they're going to be able to sell them 6 or 12 months down the road. No, this affected real people, real estate investors, real people who are buying properties for that, again, purpose of building an income and ultimately providing rental properties to people at an affordable rate so that they can live in those properties and have a roof over their head. So the reason why I want to talk about this, and I'm going to throw up the headline here, is because it has significant implications on our market if Canada follows suit. And what I want to talk about today is, what are the possible things that Canada could do to curb the market and whether or not they're likely. So I want to get in here and I'm going to start by talking about, first and foremost, removing the capital gains exemption, because this is something that RBC suggested this week, that the government of Canada remove the capital gains exemption. And basically what the capital gains exemption is it is the exemption on profits that are basically earned by somebody who has bought a property to live in it, has lived in it for several years, and has realized an increase in the value of the property. Now, to this point, Canadians who buy a property to live in it don't have to pay capital gains on any increases in value on the property. So this is something that's been suggested that they remove, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say right now that this is something that is very unlikely to happen. And the reason why is just because of the political equity that it would destroy if the Liberal government were to say to Canadians, okay, you've all bought houses now. You bought your house at $600,000. It's now worth $1 million. You're going to have to pay us taxes on the $400,000 when you go to sell it. If they did that, I genuinely believe that they would have a very, very, very hard time getting elected. So while this might seem like a good option, a good way to pay off all the debt that the federal government is accumulating, I don't think it's something that is likely to happen anytime soon. Now, here's one that I think is possible. I think you could see a higher stress test. So them increasing the interest rate that people have to qualify at. This is the easiest way to basically reduce the ceiling that people qualify for, and therefore housing prices and what housing prices can go to. Now, there's been a lot of comments in the comment section about fraud happening in Toronto and Vancouver. My general sense, and from what I know as being a mortgage broker, is most of the time, most fraud doesn't make it through. Banks are really good at catching that. They have corporate security that talks amongst the banks. So if you are a Scotiabank client and you apply at RBC and you fake some bank statements or something like that, RBC and Scotiabank can talk to each other and compare the bank statements, make sure that what you're saying is actually true. So fraud is not something that I necessarily see as a major problem in Canada. I know it's been pointed out as something that's there. Obviously it is, but not a huge problem. But at the end of the day, increasing the stress test, having to qualify at a higher rate, is something that I could definitely see being on the radar of the government, and something that would potentially make sense for them to do if they want to curb the increasing purchases in the property market. Because here's what's happening is, yes, the values of properties are going up relative to income, but with lower interest rates, the payments relative to income are still remaining about the same. And that's why we're seeing people be able to afford more houses. The easiest way to fix that and make it so housing prices can't go up substantially further is to just simply make people qualify at a higher interest rate. Now, the next thing that's been suggested is higher down payments. And in this case, I'm going to talk about specifically higher down payments with respect to properties that people are purchasing to live in. Again, this is a political equity conversation. I don't think this will happen, because I think, quite frankly, it would cause the Liberal government to not get elected for probably 10 to 15 years again. I think it would do significant damage to the Liberal Party if they were to implement this. So, something that could potentially bring the market back down, but it just increases the barrier to entry for people and makes it harder for them to purchase properties. Because let's say you raise the down payment from 5% to 10%. Well, somebody who's buying a $500,000 property now needs $50,000 instead of $25,000. It just pushes those lower end borrowers out of the market even further. So I don't think this one's on the table. Now, granting increases with respect to the first-time homebuyer plan. We have seen that the New Zealand government increased the amount of income that's eligible for their first-time homebuyer program. I think this is something that could be tweaked. It definitely needs tweaking. We in the past have talked about the fact that this is a horrible program. Most people don't take advantage of it. It limits how much property you can buy if you want to take advantage of the program. It makes the government your partner, which has a whole bunch of really bad implications with respect to having a partner, a business partner in this case, that gets to make the rules. This program could use some tweaking, and I think that might be a good place for the government to start looking if they want to make it so that first-time homebuyers have an opportunity to get into the market. This one, I think, is the most likely scenario. I think we are likely going to see a higher down payment requirement for people who are purchasing investment properties. Right now, you need at least 20% down to buy a revenue property. I very realistically could see this going to 35% down or 50% down in the near future. 50% is probably a little bit high, but 35% down I think is within the realm of possibility. And then what that would do is it would reduce that speculator drive in the market, because they would need more cash in order to buy properties. And it would also make it so that basically, if you think of it from the perspective of they have to put 20% down now, if you doubled the down payment that they needed, they could only buy half the properties. So I think this is a real possibility in the coming future here. Removing interest tax deduction. I don't know how New Zealand's going to get away with this. I don't know how the people of New Zealand are going to react to this, but I can tell you right now that in an economy like Canada's, who is butted up against the American economy, the biggest capitalist economy in the world, I can't foresee the federal government removing the ability to make a tax deduction for the interest costs of the mortgages when somebody buys a rental property. I think it would be absolutely absurd if they did that. It would absolutely increase supply, because I'm sure some people would sell their properties as a result, but I think this one's probably out of question as well. They may surprise me, who knows, but I think what New Zealand's done is the definition of bad policy with respect to trying to limit speculators, when in reality what they're doing is they're affecting not the speculators, but investors and long-term investors. So, I think that, what New Zealand did is something that Canadians need to pay attention to, because what we need to make sure is that similar sort of thing doesn't happen in Canada. What we need is well thought out, meaningful policies. If they are going to do something, if they are going to introduce regulation to pull back the steam in the real estate market, then I think they need to be conscious of making sure that they aren't having adverse effects like increasing rental rates and making it harder for people to rent because you've kicked real estate investors out of the market. So, I think what New Zealand is doing long term is going to be a lesson to Canadians. I think that what we're seeing in New Zealand is an indication that the problems we're facing with respect to real estate aren't just in Canada, but worldwide. Low interest rates are leading to real estate booms, and that's essentially leading to a recovery in the economy. It's something that goes along with low interest rates, and it's something that drives the economy as well. So, I think that we need to make sure that we're cognizant of where real estate values are going and that they're not going too high. But we also need to understand that this is a piece of the puzzle when it comes to recovery, and that we need to make sure our government is listening to us and making sure that we aren't doing crazy things like what New Zealand did this week. So if you found this video useful, do me that favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button so more people like you can see this video, and leave me your comments. What do you think the Canadian government should do in order to curb the real estate market and make it so houses are more affordable for those first-time home buyers? Don't forget about our race to 10,000 subscribers, and we'll see you on the very next video. Cheers.